3. The Pan-African Pyramid Weekly Round Table with your speaker Andrew Irumba Katusabe. With my senior comrades, Comrade Daniel Garama Karuchiko. Nice to meet you, sir.
Glad to meet you and welcome from
and my senior brother, the usual suspect.
The usual.
The usual one.
Back.
Comrade Lisafri
Back
Thomas.
on the mainland.
He was hibernating in
I was hibernating in Oman.
Oman?
Yes.
How is Oman?
Oman is dry, my brother. Now I saw why those people came to Africa.
Now you know why.
Now I know. When they saw Zanzibar, they were not coming back.
I saw him taking pictures of those isolated green cover.
Yeah. You know, those guys are very interesting.
Now you know why whites cannot leave Africa.
No, those Omanis, I know where they reach. When they found Africa, they found heaven. This is rock after rock after mountain after rocks. On the other side of the mountain, you have the Arabs from Wahhabi that fight you. On the other side is the Portuguese that fight you. Those guys were done. Those guys were done. They saw Zanzibar. They said, no. Why is it that it's more developed than where we come from? But we say we are from here. That's a problem. It was a nice place.
Ladies and gentlemen, today's show is dedicated to Traore. On 30th September 2022, Captain Traore took power. He took power at the age of 34. He is the world's youngest head of state right now as we speak. Came to power through a military coup. He actually ousted Lieutenant Colonel Paul Henry Sandago Damiba. Damiba himself had seized the power earlier in January 2022 by overthrowing President Rochmark Christian Kabore. Ibrahim Traore, from September 2022, these are some of the achievements just in 2 years that he has so far done. He strengthened the fight against jihadists. He launched large-scale military operations to reclaim terrorist-held territories in the north and east. He formed volunteers for the defense of the homeland, VDP, a community-based force to aid the army. He reduced French military influence. He actually expelled French troops and ended military agreements with France in early 2023. He closed French media outlets accused of propaganda. Promoted or pivoted to alternate alliances. Traore strengthened ties with Russia, including Wagner-affiliated support, and Mali, Niger, and Guinea. He joined the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, with Mali and Niger as a regional bloc against Western neocolonialism and ECOWAS pressure. He boldly spoke against imperialism and neocolonialism in international forums. He became a symbol of African youth resistance and sovereignty. He focused on national sovereignty. He promoted self-reliance in governance, defense, and economy. He advocated for mineral resources control to benefit Burkinabe people. He particularly talked about gold and other natural resources that must benefit the Burkinabe people, not the French people. Burkina Faso's Pan-African credentials. Thomas Sankara era in 1983 to 1987, known as Africa's Che Guevara of Sankara, was a revolutionary Pan-Africanist who renamed the country from Upper Volta. It was initially called Upper Volta, and then Thomas Sankara named it Burkina Faso, which means land of the upright people. So when you're looking for the upright people, you look for Burkina Faso. That's the meaning of Burkina Faso. He rejected Western aid and IMF stroke World Bank dependency. That is Thomas Sankara. He rejected Western aid and IMF stroke World Bank dependency. He promoted women's rights, reforestation, and anti-corruption and local production. He campaigned for African unity and debt cancellation. Sankara's ideals remain deeply influential, especially among youth and soldiers like Traore. The country's current anti-imperialist stance echoes Sankara's vision. Burkina Faso remains a symbol. Burkina Faso remains a symbolic ground for revolutionary Pan-African thought in West Africa and Africa at large. We visited Thomas Sankara, Traore.
You were not wrong.
You haven't visited Sankara.
He's also the reincarnation.
Yes, he's actually when we visited Traore, we went to his
Grave.
His grave, and then they created a monument and a memorial site where he was shot from. That place was now secured as his memorial site. So we visited him in January. Between 29th and January, we were in Burkina Faso as a Pan-African organization, primarily to galvanize support, global support of Africans, those living on the continent and those in the diaspora, to mobilize support towards Traore's leadership style. Our aim was to draw attention from the Western world that is trying to again downplay Traore like they did to Thomas Sankara, to show them that, look, this time Africa is more awake. You killed Thomas Sankara and everything went on as you planned. This time round it is not going to be possible.
It's not going to be planned.
With the Traore. So that is the message. I went myself with a delegation of 15 members, chosen carefully from across the world. I went with some people, 2 people from Jamaica, 2 from America, another one from from Zimbabwe. I picked our elder Joshua Maponga. I picked Winnie Mandela. From Kenya, we went with Babu Awino and others. There were 3. A delegation of 15 Pan-African members to go and make a message clear to the world. The French people. Remember, Traore actually ejected all French military bases in Burkina Faso. He did not end there. He influenced the other member states, Niger and Mali. And now another one joined last week. There's another country, I'm forgetting. They also joined, they ejected
for the Confederation.
Chad. Yes, Chad.
But even Botswana is also chasing all the American military bases.
Exactly. So
the influence now, the permeation.
Yes. So the Traore you are looking at there as the president of Burkina Faso, he's not just a president of Burkina Faso. No. There is a revolution that he's leading that belongs to Africa. That belongs to Africa, not just Burkina Faso. So I want us to start from there. We'll begin with you, my elder Daniel Rugarama. In the last 2 years, what you can speak about Traore, his achievements, but also Burkina Faso as a country, as a whole.
Thank you so much, our speaker and comrade Irumba. A very good morning to my brother, who had spent some time chilling in
3 weeks in
the hot springs of Oman, comrade Rutati Narsafri, and our ardent, most respected viewers and fellow thinkers. I greet you once again, and I make the Solomon promise that we shall keep this growing with your support.
Because we want to keep the African hopes alive.
Like the late Shaka Sali used to say. May his soul rest in eternal peace. Mr. Speaker, sir, permit me the latitude to navigate the contribution of most of the African, Pan-Africans that have made a very meaningful contribution on the African continent. We do reckon the fact that even before the 1884-1885 Berlin Conference, which literally partitioned the African continent into small pieces of interest for the colonizing power, there had been other ventures by especially Europeans and America in collaboration with the Arabs on the African continent. We had experienced slave trade, which had depopulated African continent, but at the same time also dehumanized because the trade in human beings was at such an alarming scale that, like I've always noted, compared to what happened to the Jews, it makes the story of the Holocaust just a story of a chicken thief as compared to the Africans who were in very many millions of them. Although death is death, dehumanization is dehumanization, even if it is for one person, but we are talking about numbers. However, the spirit of resistance after the slave trade, and later on we had, of course, the entry of colonialism, and colonialism came along with the majority, I think, Christianity, whether you want to look at that Christianity as Catholicism or Anglicanism. That's why where there was a church, you found that the administration of the governor they were collaborating. And actually, when you read books like Mongo Betty, Poor Christ of Bomba, the setting is in Cameroon. You get the idea that the white man around that time would mistreat through forced labor and other related activities the black man, and another white man would appear like a consoler. I'm consoling you. Then we got a high numbers of people running to another white man in churches who would nourish their souls. But whereas the other white man who was the governor and the colonizer would be whipping them and at the same time forcing them either to collect rubber, coffee, because some of our coffee actually is called chivoko. So you can see that against that history, there emerged strong men on the African continent, and of course behind them there were women. I don't want to appear as if I'm gender insensitive. The likes of Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana, the likes of Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso. That's why I say that the emergence of Ibrahim Traore is actually making the spirit of Thomas Sankara
is an incarnate of
turn
Sankara.
Positively.
Actually, when he entered his office, one picture is him, another one is Thomas Sankara.
Absolutely.
All the government offices,
Beautiful.
they have Thomas Sankara and Ibrahim Traore.
So,
all major government offices.
That is very important.
So it is a continuation.
It's a continuation.
Yes.
Actually, the revolution had been lost at some stage, and I am glad that before it could be lost completely, then there emerges the young 34 Captain Ibrahim Traore. So you see that within the 60s, around the late 50s, early 60s, we had a lot of fire on the African continent, where we had the emergence of the likes of, like I have already noted, Kwame Nkrumah, the likes of Ben Bella, we had the Olympiacos, we had the Abdul Gamar, Nasser,
Egypt.
We had, yes, Egypt. So much they were the Pan-African credentials that actually the wife to Kwame Nkrumah was coming from Egypt. So for them, they were going beyond color, because Egypt then, like it is now, was full of Africans who were of the lighter complexion. But Kwame Nkrumah and Abdul Gamar Nasser, it is said, made it a point that he encouraged the marriage of the Egyptian to Kwame Nkrumah. We then, of course, we had the amiable around that time, Mwalimu Julius Kabaraga Nyerere. We had the likes of Patrice Lumumba. And you could see that that energy is the one, and of course we had the stiff resistance against apartheid in South Africa, and in Mozambique, in Zimbabwe, it was all brewing up. So you realize therefore that all these Pan-African fighting fronts, and at the same time the political ideologues made it very hard for the white man to stay on the African continent, to continue to exploit what he was exploiting, both human and natural resources of the black man. And no wonder that by the time 1963, when we had the Organization of African Unity Conference in Addis Ababa,
AU and later AU,
and later now renamed AU, we had quite a lot of galvanization. And of course, the white man was not seated, because even when we went into 1963 Organization of African Unity, the white man had infiltrated the camp and divided it into two. And that is how we come up with the Casablanca group and the Monrovia group. And of course, you will find that when you talk about those two camps, to the extent that even the initially proposed, by the way, headquarters of African Union were not supposed to be Addis Ababa. But because they wanted to bring the emperor, the Ethiopian emperor, who had been convinced by a white man that he was greater than all these other presidents of different countries, because for him he was an emperor. And those are the petty issues upon which Africa has been divided. And that is what, as I come to Captain Ibrahim Traore, I'm going to bring as one of the credentials that he possesses. So that fight, therefore, led to the liberation of so many African countries. That's what we call fighting against direct colonialism. And indeed, I think by the time we went to the African Union, we had more than 30 countries which were independent, at least the flag independence. And the idea was that they should use the Organization of African Union to liberate the rest of the countries that were still under the shackles of colonialism. That's why I have always insisted that the establishment of Organization of African Union, whose cardinal aim was to make sure that they dismantle the presence of the white man, at least his physical presence here, they managed to do that. Because as I talk, I don't think that we have got any country which is 100% under direct colonialism. Now, the revolution, after especially the mid-60s, as we are entering the 70s, majority of that breed of the people started dying. Patrice Lumumba was assassinated even before he could come to the conference, the African Union. The Kwame Nkrumah was exiled and he died in exile. Ben Bella died. He was certainly killed. Olympiakos was assassinated. The likes of Thomas Sankara, we know what happened to him, because he was assassinated and he was replaced by a buffoon. The other time I used that word.
Took them 4 years,
and you said, can't I get a better word? Yes, I can get a better word if there was any to describe such a group of people who take away their very own, who is advancing their agenda. But of course, like again, Dr. Crack, Patrice Lumumba was assassinated and replaced with Seseko. Mobutu was a banger.
Not a buffoon.
This one we can't say that.
And certainly, Mobutu was a banger. If there is a worse word than a buffoon, I would use it. Because Mobutu was really what?
Mobutu made more for Congo than Traore for Burkina Faso.
Who brought him and who was using him? Campowero may have, you see, when you are all fools, the argument that I am a little bit of a clever version of a fool does not help. Because at the end of the day,
bring
you are
nuances we don't
really all
understand.
fools.
So like if
So,
you have two short men and you're looking for a taller one.
that I'm a little bit taller. That argument really does not help. Anyhow, therefore, when we entered into the mid and the late 60s, there was coordinated assassinations of that group of leaders and also collapsing of the economies, and the fire that had ignited on the African continent, that revolutionary mood started dying away. Then we had later the likes of the Paulo Kagame, we had Gaddafi. Gaddafi was already there. Then we had ZANU-PF, Robert Mugabe. So you can see. Then we started getting the likes of South Africa,
Nelson.
dismantling the apartheid era. So in other words, you could point out some isolated cases of progressive Pan-African-minded leaders who were coming up on the African continent. But the problem of Africa, part of the problem of Africa has been that when we get those progressive forces and minds, they are isolated, they are few, and they will always be crushed because they cannot sustain resistance. They are betrayed by majority of their brothers.
But that's why our show matters, because we push that agenda that we're not going to let such forces.
That's definitely in my introductory remarks. I said
Exactly.
that's the reason we went
That's
to
why we
Burkina
are here.
Faso,
That's
to
why
start galvanizing power. And this is how the Americans killed Gaddafi.
Thank you very much.
By the time they killed Gaddafi, his own brothers in Africa were all like this. He's a bad man. But you ask him, what has he done?
I can even tell
They
you,
can't answer.
Mr. Speaker,
After he died, now they started analyzing. You see these people, they have killed an African leader. You see these people.
Mr. Speaker, sir,
Now they are quiet but they are not quiet on Traore.
I will even tell you that in Libya, if you take a simple random sample on the streets of Kampala, including in the people we claim to be educated, and you asked them why Gaddafi had to die, they will tell you, I want to believe even over 80%, that because he was a dictator and he refused to leave power. You can imagine that amount of paracho reasoning. You see, that's why when I say some people really they take us extremely back. And that when you go through the writings of our senior brother, Dr. Crack, Dr. John Crack is an African-American historian and a Pan-Africanist. And you will realize, even when you listen to the tapes of our late Malcolm X, even now, when you hear what our elderly Minister Louis Farrakhan says about these so-called Farrakhan superpowers, you realize that if Africa was not allowing itself to be used against itself, if there was no black person who was against the number of assassination attempts that have been on the life on Traore, like it was on the life of El Comandante Fidel Castro, like it is on the life of Hugo Chavez, you will appreciate the fact that indeed Africa will still have a long way to go if we do not emphasize the issue of ideological revitalization. Because this that we are doing, yes, because we have that. If we do not,
no, it is what's happening.
If we don't do that, then we run into a problem. Therefore, it is now a time when we should reflect and thank God. You know, our God is not this God that was brought by the white man. Our God is very different. Actually, for them, the area they take away their God, the better.
For us.
Better still, if they do not take him away, we are going to chase him. Because we have our own God, and indeed, the fact that the black person, according to archaeology, was the first to be created, it tells you where we are supposed to be. Finally,
I want to come to.
I will tell you that the spirit of Thomas Sankara must be turning positively in the grave and nodding that at least I have got one of my very own. Like the Bible says that God, after creating David, and he says that I have found a man who is after my very own heart. Thomas Sankara must be celebrating that he has found a man who is after him, because the things that Captain Thomas Sankara is doing, running through the Traore, Captain Ibrahim Traore is doing, running through the reorganization of the economy, looking at coordinating new alliances, looking at the rationalization of the minerals, looking at the trainings of his army and other forces, looking at the opening up of his country by road network, looking at chasing away the rebel activities that had become a den of thieves in his country like it is in DRC, looking at his creating new relations that are not governed by the old, archaic, useless, colonial agreements like the continuation of colonialism, concordant that had been signed with the French. I think Burkina Faso is, and of course emphasizing the creation and of the Sahel, of Confederation of the Sahel region. The things that he is doing have become quite an influencer to other countries, because now other neighboring countries, save for Niger, in addition to Niger and Mali, which are part of the Confederation of the Sahel region, the other countries, like of Botswana, Chad, all of them, and Botswana was the least expected, but it is now so coming and chasing away, because chasing away the military bases of America.
Because they are getting an agenda.
So at the end of the day,
American money.
At the end of the day, you can see, therefore, that our efforts as we pay tribute to Captain Ibrahim Traore with his other worthy colleagues, our efforts should be in making sure that we sustain this Pan-African campaign of talking, because we can never get tired. When Islam and Christianity wanted to sustain themselves here on the African continent, they didn't only stop on Sundays to preach the word of God. They have even opened special hour prayers. They also have lunch hour. They have all sorts of things. Let's use this opportunity of sustaining the Pan-African campaign to celebrate, support our brothers who are at the forefront of making sure that the revolution does not die but progresses.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Karu Chico.
Really good. Really good.
What a good finishing. Captain, comrade.
No, Captain, you can call me Captain Traore. Captain.
Unless you're saying you're
Captain Thomas Sankara.
Captain of tea.
Captain of African.
Unless you're captain of tea.
Listen, we are Pan-African captain in the sense that Sankara and Traore were captains. That's for sure. We are challenging the head of the army. If the people don't deliver, we will be there to deliver for the people.
Okay, let's go with you now.
Listen, you know, when we look at Traore, it's an interesting story, because the week Traore took power, I was on TV speaking about it, right? And a lot of people were saying, no, but there has been democratic election, this democratic election, that. And we said, listen, Traore took power at 34. When he seized power, he started to speak like Sankara, who took power at 33. Right? We have seen that from the beginning.
Took power
at 33, Sankara took power. At 34, Traore took power. So we have seen that generation of captains.
Took power at the rank of captain. Are you aware?
And they were both captain. They were both captains. So I was the first one reminding people about that. And they said, no, but military democracy. I said, what has democracy delivered for Burkinabe people right now? There are foreign troops in the country. There is no economic development. Where is the gold going? This country produces gold. It's one of the biggest producers of gold since Mansa Musa. We know there has been gold in that region since, like, literally gold exists. Like the Europeans knew about gold from those type of gold mines, not from where they come from, right? Yet they put it in the palace and everything. The gold was come from West Africa. Since the days of Mansa Musa, the gold of West Africa have made the world.
Mansa Musa was the richest man in terms of gold It is even acclaimed that at one time he moved, and wherever towns where he passed, he was distributing and paying people in gold.
In gold.
He created inflation.
Inflation for 10 years.
10 years.
Arabs spoke about it until today. They spoke about it. We need to look at those archives.
Gold from West Africa.
So where is that gold? Where has that gold been? And why is it that we see Burkina, Mali, Niger, which are those countries, being so poor today? Why is it that they have to beg for help? What is it that they have to beg for, how they call it, development loans? My joke. This is a joke, right? So where is that gold? What's happening to that gold? And I want to demonstrate in this show that this gold is still there, but it's being eluted, devoted, elaboratedly taken away from the African states that got independence in 1960, but that was never an independence because, as my brother said, it was more like military re-agreement. It was the form that Kwame Nkrumah called neocolonialism, right? They were establishing neocolonialism based on economic pillar. They gave sovereignty that was name, and they took away all the economic freedom and all the economic assets, right? And it's really important because we're speaking of a region that both have the majority of African gold and African uranium. And uranium is the rising energy power in this world, right? Because now we know that petrol is declining and gas is declining, so people invest in it. How can you explain that the uranium of Niger is lighting the light of Paris, but in Ouagadougou, in Niamey, people still suffer from electricity cottage, right? So it is quite clear that we have a president that have reorganized economic sovereignty in the region, and that's what I want to speak about. But before we speak about what he has achieved, what he has achieved, we know about imperialist forces that have been trying to destabilize him. We know of all those things. What we don't know is the fact that he is a well-educated man. What's interesting with the story is that not only he went to the same city school, Bobo Dioulasso, as Thomas Sankara was a student himself, but he was a really committed student, and he was really learning really well. He did his whole development to university. At university, he met other Pan-African leaders, right? Especially Marxist leaders that have followed the Sankara tradition and that were fighting against Traore puppets regimes, right? He went so far as a leader that he started to get engaged with the university to start solve problem of students that were taken out of register because they didn't pay the fees or things like this. He was protecting his people from the beginning. As soon as he finished university with high-level degrees and diplomas, what he did was quite interesting. He went to decide to protect his country, even if he had no military background at that time. He went to decide to protect his country. He got trained. But as soon as the insurrection started in Sahel, because they killed Gaddafi and all the weapons of Gaddafi Tuaregs went back to the regions, as soon as that happened, he went to fight. And he didn't fight for Burkina. He fight first for Mali. He went in Mali to fight in the MINUSCA contingent. And in Mali, he started to realize he passed 2 years there. So at the beginning, we have all the ingredients for great Pan-African leaders. First, he's educated. He takes time to learn from his elders. He took time to learn from those that know. He followed the line, but he didn't forget to fight for the people that were around him and that didn't for which he didn't function. Giving that generosity, he went to a Pan-African army to fight an insurgency, right? When he realized that the insurgency was backed up by foreign powers, when he realized that this insurgency was not only about Mali, and he was starting dropping to Burkina Faso and Niger, he went back to Burkina. He went back to Burkina and he started being a frontline fighters. Frontline fighters meaning what? He was frontline in the desert, and he started to raise up. In every contingency he went, he raised up to the kind of captain, right? But when you become a captain in a war, it means you have delivered. When you become a captain and there's no war, it means, I don't know, I'm not a military, but it's not the same symbol.
It's a GMO rank.
It means he rises up because he wins, right? And why does he win? Because his people believe in him. And why does people believe in him around him? Because he delivered what he said. He delivered what he said. He never overthrew, he never pushed. He delivered what he said. And that's something we have seen as a president. He also has delivered what he's talking about. Because we need to explore at least two topics. The question of the gold and the questions of the France CFA. Because he's still in the France CFA. And some people have questioned that why after 3 years we're still in the France CFA. When I want to argue that this is precisely what makes him a really, really, really great Pan-African man. Not that he didn't leave France CFA, but he doesn't want to allow the enemies to oversee that mistake. He doesn't want like the enemy. He doesn't want to go out of CFA right now without the gold to back up his new currency, because he knows they will use that instrument to weaken his country and weaken his political project. Really bright man. That's why he's really interested into the gold, right? He's educated. He fight for Mali. He went back to his country to fight for his country, and by fighting, he became a leader. He became a leader in the fight. That should remind us of someone we know really well in this country that also took leadership from his own end and didn't be delivered or given to him. He took it from his own end, right? Why I think he becomes so important is because of his age. It's been a long time Pan-African, like these shows have said, all around the continent. This is Kenya, this is South Africa, this is Nigeria, this is Algeria itself. It's been a long time people are calling for a second wave of independence. People are tired of those fake independence that give you a flag. Total independence, economic sovereignty.
Calls it flag independence.
We need economic sovereignty. You got a flag, and then what? The road of wealth that built powers have been taken away from you, right? So it's been since at least the 70s.
There are countries that signed continuation of neocolonialism.
The pact for continuation of neocolonialism.
And then you say
save for Mali
and Niger, all the French colonies, Ivory Coast also, Ivory Coast, Senegal, they fought a lot. No, to refuse Guinea. Yeah, Guinea.
You're saying you're independent, but you have signed a pact to remain a colon of somebody.
So
at this
point, Traore become, I believe, the voice of the new Pan-African agenda, raising from the 2000s, from we want economic sovereignty. Those flag sovereignty is not enough. We want economic sovereignty to avoid being quickly recolonized. Right? And leaders have told us that since the 60s, but it's really in the 2000s that he blows. And then with social media, he extended. Because Africans were well aware that they have independence. But they were well aware that those independents didn't build the power that helped them to deliver a better life to its people. Right? They were well aware that the economic sovereignty is never there. The economic sovereignty was still taken in the hands of few that were connected to foreign powers. Basically, if it's not even foreign African communities, not always like African communities were part of that. So it is quite clear that Traore himself, when he reached power, he heard about all those things. He was part of that Pan-African agenda that says the problem is we have sovereignty but no economic sovereignty. Our leaders are puppets of economic interests that are not national interests. They are their own, they believe in their own interests. What is it that needs to be done? Economic wealth needs to be redirected, to be transformed within Africa. Within Africa, right? We cannot let our mineral go to Mombasa and Dar es Salaam and clap because now we have raising numbers. That's no raising numbers are no good. You send all of this money away. Why is it that you're celebrating? What is there to celebrate? There's nothing to celebrate when we send your wealth away. So that's what Traore understood. And so I believe that Traore, rather than being like the new idol of Pan-Africans, he was first a student of Pan-African leaders. He was first a student of Pan-African leaders that have established clearly what was the problem. That yes, we do have sovereignty. Yes, it is true. Yes, it is true, our leadership have some autonomy when it comes to that sovereignty, but he has zero power because economic wealth has been taken out from their own ends. You see it in Kenya, you see it in South Africa, you see it in Nigeria. All of those countries, they have great resources that the world needs, in Congo as well. But yet, we do not see a proper economic agenda being built that empower the nations, right? So what Traore did?
You find the leader, the president, or the leadership cabal are very rich, but the people they are leading are extremely poor.
Even those leaders are not so rich. Like even the puppets, they small puppet. They're not even rich puppets. Kabore from the one you spoke about.
They are simple.
It was a joke.
Call comprados.
Yeah. It was a joke.
The other name is actually economic agent.
It's economic agent.
When you're a broker, you are just a broker. You are not even owning any processing plant. You are not owning a factory. You are not manufacturing anything. You are simply trading in selling your country, your people, for somebody who is paying you
little.
What actually he is stealing from you.
And I think
that level of myopism is
No,
what
no, no.
disturbs
It's
us.
not myopism. It's not myopism. That's what I'm trying to say. Because when you have established, the problem is the confusion you spoke about in all those shows. We speak about the confusion, the lack of clarity. We have independence, but there's no independence. Some people are stealing money. We fight those people, but we don't see where the money is actually going. We don't see who put that people in charge of sending that money away. So what did Traore did? He did a national gold policy that went really, really, really far into breaking down the capacity of the Western powers of all those
He cancelled all the gold contracts.
He started by cancelling all the gold contract, but not only. Because cancelling contract will leave the gold there, and there's still like his people working on some artisanal miners, especially. So he couldn't mess up with the system without being smart about it. He started first to establish a state-owned mining company. Can you believe we're in 2025 and there was still no state-owned company that make gold in Burkina, that export gold in Burkina? And he said not only we have a state-owned company.
That was the same problem with Uganda.
Imagine.
Until Museveni, the president, put a stop to exporting raw materials. That is how we are getting more than 7 gold refineries in Uganda.
Yes.
Because he put a stop to the
In Uganda we have gold refineries.
About 7, not 1.
Where are
And
they?
the main one actually is in Entebbe. As you are moving
Entebbe,
to the
you move to
UN.
the-
You see that UN airport?
Hey.
That is the main one. It can refine thousands of kilograms of gold. That is how.
Uganda has a gold refinery.
Not only
7.
that, because we put a full stop to the export of iron ore.
Yes.
The raw iron ore, and it is argued that Uganda has got the second best quality of iron ore. And iron ore is where we get this
Kasese.
iron for making.
Isn't that Kasese?
It is written different Kabare. It is we
everywhere,
have
all the way.
many deposits.
But the best is Kasese. Kasese Cobalt.
That is why, because that is ancient. That's what we have always known. But there are other sites.
That's where it gets interesting. That's where it gets interesting because he created a state-owned mining company, and then he said, "Now we are building our own gold refinery." And not only all the gold of Burkina will pass by here, but for all the previous contracts that were signed before his regime, he said he looked at the regulation and he said, "Listen, now we have a new regulation. You have to pay at least 15% of that gold back to us, right? Otherwise, we will come and size it ourselves." He went to the biggest refinery in Burkina, owned by a Canadian, French, Australian. We don't know those guys. They have multiple passports. And he sized the gold himself because he saw that those guys were lying. Those guys were lying about how much gold they export.
Traore went into the gold refinery.
He sent his soldiers, he sized the gold himself because he realized that those guys said that they export 5 tons of gold, but Dubai said like they received 25 tons of gold. How is that possible? Right? So he went to see, he sized the new legislation.
Information, Comrade Rafari, just information. Do you know that kind of discovery which President Traore made is what actually our departed brother in Tanzania, Dr. Magufuli, made. And after he had made it, by the way,
that's what let me correct this.
That's why.
Let me correct. Because when he said departed, some people who don't know how he departed may think
he departed like
he was killed.
He didn't depart like when I travel. I'm telling you.
Because
He was killed for COVID-19. He knew COVID-19 was somebody's business.
Yes. He
knew.
They said he knows too much into the economic sphere of his country. That he was doing things independently. He was not taking loans. Do you know it is
that's
a
why
crime?
we should not fall in the trap of imperialism.
It is a crime for you not to participate in the programs of World Bank and International Monetary Fund. You can, yes, it's an economic crime, and the imperialists will take you out because of that.
So listen,
if they fail to destabilize your country, they will come for your life.
But this is
you
my
must
point.
Comply.
Traore is not. You see, like the way the Western media
is complying.
Western media, they try to put Traore as the only leader that stand out because he's young, because he has new idea, blah blah blah. This is fake. Julius Malema have said those things. Mangafuli have said those things. A lot of
Julius
leaders.
Malema has even been denied the visa now.
Prof. Lumumba have said those things.
To London.
Pan-African leaders have educated Traore, and now the West is trying to say that Traore is the one that emerged out of all. No, he has emerged for sure. And yes, Pan-Africans support him, but is the result of Pan-African education, is the result of new leadership that has understood. He have listened to Malema. He has listened to Mangafuli. He has listened to all the latest voices. Pierre Lumumba, of course, you have listened to those people. You have understood. If we don't own a mining company, What can we coal? Those guys mine for us, and then they put it in their own stock, and they put the numbers they want. We need to have our state-owned company. We need to build gold refinery like Magufuli did in Tanzania. He got inspiration from the cities.
Magufuli.
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 Not
Sorry.
Magufuli.
Magufuli.
Magufuli. Very
He
good.
has established, one of the interesting things is he has not left the France CFA. And the France CFA is backed up by gold in France, right? And what he's doing is for the very first time in the history of Burkina, Evan Sankara didn't do that, by the way, I was surprised. He established a national gold reserve in the bank, in the central bank. So now the gold of Burkina Faso, by percentage, enter the central bank. So all the time Burkina Faso mine gold, its currency gets stronger and stronger, and then one day he can depart from the CFA. But he won't depart from the CFA without having the backing of the gold, because he knows he opened the door for imperialists to beat him with exactly like similar things to what happened in the US with Trump and all that. So when you let the market, when you open such an opportunity for the market to beat you, he will do. With the current France CFA, he's protecting himself because he knows that he is building national gold reserve, and as soon as he will have national gold reserve, he can back up a new currency in both Mali, Niger and Burkina, and he's the leader that is doing this. What is really interesting is that he didn't only say that he's going to nationalize some mines. He took the permit from mining companies that were listed overseas, right? So 2 London listed companies. Can you believe the gold of Burkina Faso was traded in London? Seriously, I didn't even before I read this. He has taken away 2 London firm, 2 London firm from the gold contract, and he said now we have to take control of more own mines. If they don't respect of legislation of 15%, we take control of them, and that is what is happening. What is happening is that reinforcing these new mining contracts is key. He has stopped, and that's also really important, the small-scale mining contracts, because there were permits in Burkina Faso that allow me to have like a small permit and gold or mine. But what was happening is that the big company were using this in order to export the gold without like properly documenting anything. So there were legislation in place that allows all the robbers to rob, right? And he said to suspend the insurance of export permit for small-scale private gold production until we know where that gold come from. And if you look, it happened also in Ghana. Now, we spoke about it in the show previously. You can check it on YouTube. We spoke about it. It is important that a small-scale mining that is called artisanal mining, because it is not bigly capitalized, is also under the scrutiny of power. Otherwise, it will create a pipe where those companies will come in and they will use small people to actually reach their goal of exporting the gold without a proper value. He has done so much to document and contribute to government revenue that, and listen to this one, even the IMF have recognized a robust economy and progress in raising domestic revenue. He has, even according to the IMF, he has governed better than any other countries. It is really interesting because even the IMF recognized that his patriotic nationalist policy are working for his country. They don't even deny what is obvious. He has raised domestic revenue because he recaptured the value of the gold rather than seeing it evaporate.
It is the same thing, Comrade Rutatina, that is happening in Venezuela. Hugo Chavez is actually raising back his country. Correct. To the extent that the World Bank and Maduro, Comrade Maduro, is, of course, we usually get
the big
interchangeable, we use them interchangeably. So, like when we are talking about Raúl in Cuba and then Air Commandant, so it is common to find that we mix up those names. But thank you. Comrade Hugo, Comrade no. Our president in
Maduro,
Venezuela, Comrade Maduro, has raised back his country economically speaking. You know, it used to be a multi-million oil dollar company. When America came and dropped everything, they went back to a near collapse. And you could see all that in the country. But because of the visionary leadership now of Comrade Maduro, there is steady progress to the extent that IMF and the World Bank which sometimes come up with figures which are highly questionable, is not only recognizing the fact that actually Comrade Captain Ibrahim Traore is doing a wonderful job, they are also recognizing the fact even when United States of America is again trying to destabilize the government of Maduro and Traore, no doubt about it. They are even trying to stop him, by the way, from going to Russia until the Russians gave him the support. So I concur and join issues with my brother, Comrade Rutatina here, to the extent that all these developments, and maybe to add just about three. One, I mean extra, the Captain Ibrahim Traore, the country. In other words, the Sahel Confederation of the Sahel region, that Sahel area has been known for rebel activities, and you see, rebel activities, the so-called jihadists, are a creation of somebody out there, and we seem not to understand that, by the way.
This one
is not part of them. They have dissociated themselves from him.
Ancestors.
That he talks bad about them. May I want to rephrase it and say he talks the truth, and they don't like the truth. So what happens is that on the African continent and elsewhere, where there have been a lot of civil upheavals, what happens on the African continent, especially in the Sahel region, right from what Rutatina said here, from Libya, after the fall of Comrade Muammar Gaddafi, there was, and of course the arms started infiltrating to the lower parts, and the entire Sahel region increased in armaments. That is a recipe for economic disaster. Because there is no country that can ever develop, there is no country that can sustain agriculture, there is no country that can prosper economically when you are having the level of insecurity like we are having in DRC. The reason as to why DRC cannot develop is because somebody, and especially the imperialists, have made it their business to increase rebel activities in that region, create the presence of MONUC and MONUSCO, the so-called peacekeeping security forces, for purposes of protecting the interests of those who are exploiting, like our sister and auntie, Dr. Arkana Chigombori says. When you are in DRC and you look at the amount of air traffic, the planes which are taking off and the planes which are landing, you may think that if you are not in Brussels, then you are somewhere in one of the airports in United States of America. But in actual sense, those are commercial planes and they are stealing. The word is what?
Stealing.
They are stealing.
Not trading.
They are not trading anywhere. The raw materials of. Even when they made an excuse that Uganda, for me, I cannot steal from you. You are my brother. If I come to your house and take a shot, it is just because I'm naked. I will bring it back after I have gone for it.
Or even when I come to your place, I will pick it and add another one.
Yes.
And I come back with two.
Yes. So for us, we cannot be accused of stealing.
He may take me one shot. When I visit him, I pick mine, but also pick his.
Another one. In other words, for us, we can't steal.
But for friends,
that is
when
stealing.
they come to plunder, they even want to go with their life.
The intention for them is to come. It's a stealing. This is theft. The ingredients of theft is somebody who comes, takes something that is capable of being taken, and without your permission, you the owner, and with him on his path, without intention of returning that thing back. And that is what they do. Now, finally, I want to tell you that Traore, on top of all that he has done, he has managed to fight his own wars, majority which he inherited. The jihadists, these people who are neighboring on that strip of the Sahel region, they are the ones who have been crippling the economy of Burkina Faso, but also of Niger, but also of Mali. He has now combined forces because he has a slogan which resonates well with all his neighbors, that when you attack any of us,
you have attacked all of us.
You have attacked all of us.
Good point. Now let me add as he comes in. These Western powers, these Western colonialists, like you see them in Congo, especially let's talk about Congo. They came and brought what they call peacekeepers. But in that group of peacekeepers, there are duelists,
The geologists,
geologists,
the economists,
the economists,
the finance managers.
The finance manager is really important. It's really important, please.
Then there are army generals.
Yes.
Then there are doctors. Eh? But these doctors are soldiers. When they went there, you think they have come to create peace. Yet actually, when they reached there, they cut off the biggest part of Congo with minerals, gold and so on, and then boosted the rebels. They rearmed them. They dressed them with new uniforms. They gave them new medicines to fight against the diseases that would attack them in the bush. They gave them new doctors. You know? Now, the other government soldiers, when they came to attack the rebels, they found the peacekeepers in the middle between the government soldiers and the rebels. Now they have created a buffer zone in between them. And then
that's Ivory Coast is
when these guys said we want to go there and attack the rebels, they said no, you can't go beyond this point because we are peacekeepers. We are negotiating. We are the middlemen. We are creating peace for you. The rebels are behind their backs. They are killing people, stealing everything. These peacekeepers are in the middle. They have created a buffer zone between the government soldiers and the rebels. And then they say they are peacekeepers. Now, behind their backs, these rebels are plundering minerals. They are actually even going out in the neighboring countries, hiring people, if not forcing them into forced labor, making sure that they plunder as much minerals as possible, both day and night. In that zone where the rebels have occupied, that's where the biggest planes, number of planes are landing and taking off. Did you realize that, my comrade?
Mr. Speaker.
The biggest number of planes are landing and taking off from that part of the rebel-infested area.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, I want to make one statement. And this one I'm echoing the statement that was made by the late Comrade Malcolm X, which has been repeated by Comrade Dr. Umar Johnson, and this is what they have to say.
That's Africa, my friend.
They say that if Africans do not understand who their enemy is and how the enemy operates, Africa will never know peace.
Now, to finish my point, Comrade Lisafri, one of those fateful days, a UN chopper gets an accident.
Oh yeah.
When it in Congo,
Yeah.
when it falls down, guess what they found?
They found like
Gold.
a lot of gold in his pockets, falling out. But
Not the medicine.
this is exactly what we've been talking about, right? It is quite clear that Traore has reorganized trade route for West African gold, right? And by doing so, he has offered his country a second independence. He has offered his country a second independence that embodies the Pan-African agenda for sovereignty, for economic sovereignty. That economic sovereignty is not only something Burkina people needs. Kenyan need it, South African need it, Nigerians need
They
it.
have William Ruto.
Congo needs it. William Ruto is a puppet. We know, we've been talking about that long time.
Yes.
Congo, Sudan.
Congo, I agree.
Congo, Sudan, South Africa, Kenya. They all need a Traore. Not because of his name, but because of the agenda he's pushing of economic sovereignty. We need to transform any minerals coming out of the continent in the continent. No raw mineral should be able to live in Mombasa, Durban, or Dar es Salaam. That should be forbidden. And then my last point will go for Traore himself, right? As an educated leader that have studied geology, that has reorganized all those trade roads, right? It is important we notice that this agenda of economic sovereignty will survive him if he continues on the agenda of energy sovereignty that is building with Niger right now. The French has a mine in Niger called Oromo. This is the oldest uranium mine in the world, exploited, right? This mine is providing, as we said, uranium for France and for Central Powers. It is important that the agenda that Traore is doing with gold is being done also in Niger. So now the gold of Burkina can also buy the uranium of Niger and be used in order to produce electricity with the help of other actors, maybe Russia, maybe South Korea, we don't know. But what we know is that there is more resources to nationalize in the Sahel. And what Traore is doing, and what all the IAES are doing, is making sure that those create revenues and money and wealth for its people within the Sahel and not outside of the Sahel region.
Good, thank you so much, Comrade Lesafri. To boost your argument about the increase in GDP, Traore 2 years ago found the GDP of Burkina Faso at 18.8 billion. It is now at 23.1 billion.
In 2 years.
In 2 years.
3 years, eh?
Yeah. He raised the salary of the servants, this servant salary, by 50%. But he cut the salaries of the ministers and MPs, members of parliament, by 30%. He increased the salaries of the police officers, the teachers, the
classic Sankara policy,
by 50. He cut by 30% the salaries of those the political class, the MPs, the ministers. He cut it by 30. He launched, he talked about it, the first gold refinery. He refused, now he stopped exportation of raw gold minerals. He does not allow. And so many other. He has revived the cotton industry.
Maybe on that point, just on that point, before we move further, Mr. Speaker, sir, if you will permit me, one of the arguments of all progressive-minded African leaders has always been only that they are let down sometimes, or they let themselves down. That actually Africa has been donating to Europe and America more than America donates to Africa. When you look at the corrections through visa applications, for instance, it is estimated that America, the applicants on the African continent, are desiring to go to United States of America. In visa fees alone, we have got hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollar money. But when it comes to, say, the support which now President Trump has got in health, you will find that it is even a quarter or less than a quarter of what they correct for them from us yes. in visa application. In fact, who is donating
in
to
fact, who? In fact, I was with who? I don't know whether it was with Safri. Not, I think around January.
Yes.
I was holding an argument saying, how do you say, if you want to come to America, come and apply for visa.
Yeah.
I come and apply. I pay for money. After 2 weeks, you say, sorry, we are full. We are not allowing you. But you have taken my money. And I am not one. No, we are millions of Africans.
Yes. And
you know very well, America sits down and says, this year, 2025, we will only allow 1 million Africans into America. What do? They don't tell you. Now, 50 million Africans apply. They all pay money. But they know, America knows that they will only allow 1 million Africans. It means you are stealing from us. Because you are selling to me a commodity that you know you don't have and you're not going to give me.
Yep. And that
this is
property. Day one.
If I did that, if I committed that offense here, this locally here, this local police, if I came, Mr. Lesafri, if I came and charged you money that I'm going to sell to you this phone, and I did not.
You don't even have the phone. This is not even your phone. You can even sell his phone.
And you go to police. Wait, let me finish. And you go to police. Do you know what they would charge me with? Receiving money by false pretenses. It's an offense.
It's an offense.
Countries are stealing from Africans in broad daylight.
Broad light.
But it is okay. America is stealing from Africa. hundreds of millions of money every day. Africans are applying. They know they are not going to allow you, but you have applied, they will take your money. And tomorrow, by the way, this is what they do also.
They're paying millions of salaries.
Wait. Today, when you're not successful, they tell you sorry. Try again later.
But we need to do something else also.
So 3 months later, they prompt you to try again. They prompt you. You try again and apply. You take another money. They eat it. They tell you sorry. Next year, try again later. You can try 10 times and they're eating your money. And everybody's okay with it.
That's how they pay the salary in the embassy.
Then after that, they say, we are donating money to AIDS patients in Uganda, and we
with
clap.
Conditionalities, by the way. With conditionalities on your internal and foreign policy. But wait a minute. There is something now, a responsibility now shifts to us as Africans. And this, from the Pan-African point of view, this is how we propose. There is a great need, and we must do it as early as yesterday, for African countries and other countries who fall in the category of what Africa is going through, that even before we have to assess ourselves, even before any independent Ugandan or African applies to the American embassy, we should have a liaison office, which is us, Ugandan, and which is Pan-African in nature. You see, my quarrel has always been, and I repeat it, and I hope the powers that be are listening. Wherever I have got an opportunity, and usually get these many opportunities anyway, I have said we have failed our country and our continent by deploying cadres who do not know the gospel. Even St. Paul was saying, how will they know the gospel when we have not sent their evangelists? But how will the evangelists take there the gospel when they don't know the gospel itself? The problem we have is that we have deployed Africans to these important offices, but the Africans we have deployed there don't know what they are supposed to do. They are not Pan-African enough. Or they can easily be compromised. Wait as I conclude on this. Just one other statement. Therefore, on the issue of application fees, for instance, visa application fees, we need to deploy our own cadres who understand how Europe and America steal from us. So that we are able, without charging our own nationals money, because we have to feel for our own people, they assess. Then they ask the Americans. We have got these so many applications, and we are about to let them come to you. Are you willing and able to take these numbers? Can we do our internal assessment between ourselves so that we stop the stealing of our people's money? If we don't do that, it is going to be a problem. But America's arrogance and European arrogance is like this. They are not going to allow that.
No, they can't.
They are going to Pan-African certificate.
Bring them to apply to us.
We've been talking about that.
Alternatively,
No, you need a certificate.
Alternatively, you can
Pan-African certificate to go
payback
away.
system. That if Mr. Ogama applied for a visa and he was unsuccessful, you should refund his money. You can maybe even make a surcharge of the processes, because there is a staff that you pay to handle Rugarama when he's applying. He answers you online, he does this, he does. Okay, you can say, we will refund maybe 80% or 70%. But for them, they take the entire money. I have not got for the service that I paid for. I have not got it, but you have charged me 100%.
Do you know that arrogance? This is the arrogance we are talking about. And that is why, even when our very own colleague, by the way, Justice Lydia Mugambe was tried and convicted in UK, in that Oxford Crown Court. Even when, after reading the judgment, you could see, yes, all right, there are some provisions of their law that was actually broken, and probably maybe, and this is a very big maybe, our very own senior in terms of legal knowledge should have known some of these things. But for us, Africans, there is a way we treat situations, which is different from how they treat their own situations. But you see, even when you look at the reasoning of the judge and later on the conviction, we can be forgiven for thinking that there is a lot of arrogance which is embedded in that judgment to say that even your very own High Court judge is not good enough for us. We find her as silly as any commoner villager in any part of Africa. To send that message, they do that.
I want to also just bounce back quickly before I also conclude on my points. But what I think we've been talking about and we've been trying to grapple here in this show for a long time is the idea that without intellectual formation, Pan-African formation, Pan-African training, when you reach the world, you're going to become or a sellout or a betrayer of the cause, right? Just by structural system and how the West functions with this visa system, right? So I think what we also want to call for is a Pan-African certificate to allow the youth to travel to study overseas. I think it is really important that when we see like those powers trying to take the best talents of Africa, they look for diplomas. This one has done geology, this one has good marks, this one has been to international school. We should do the same. To allow people to go overseas, they should have first to register into some sort of Pan-African trainings where they demonstrate that they have the knowledge, and not only knowledge in mathematics, in archaeology, knowledge in history, knowledge in sovereignty. So when they reach the world, and that's what I've been doing for 2 years in South Africa, I've been saying that in my class day after day. If you reach the world without intellectual preparation, they will take you, they will brainwash you, and you will come back to tell your followers that you are right and they are wrong. Not even as a spy, as a tool to engineer neocolonialism from America itself or from Africa.
The pride we have.
But I want to say last thing on Traore. I wanted to say the Pan-African certificate. Last thing on Traore.
As you said it on Traore, I want you also to close it with what you make of his latest trip to Russia.
Okay.
That will be. You can wrap it.
Okay, there's 2 points then. One about Russia, the second one. I just want to remind people that Thomas Sankara stayed in power only 50 months. Only 50 months, 4 years. We still speak about it because of all what he achieved. And we have been speaking about that in this show. We won't summarize it here. He has achieved a lot in 4 years. Thomas Sankara.
2 years.
Thomas Sankara.
Oh, Thomas Sankara.
4 years. Now Traore is going to reach in September 3 years in power. Right? Which means what? Which means that this is the moment that imperialists have chosen first to kill Sankara. Now they might choose the same moment to kill Traore. So it is really important to support the men.
He has actually, there have been...
No, there's a lot of attempts, but 32 months. Now he's being protected by Chad. Right? Chadians have sent troops to protect him, and Chadians were really powerful. Unfortunately, too often aligned with French interests. But that's another point, because now there's a new president, and the new president seems to have broken that. So it is important that that every Pan-African support, as we're doing, push for that and remind people that we don't want a new Sankara that died, and then now we have to wait 20 years for Burkina Faso to become what he can become and what he can achieve. Now on the question of Russia. Right? Captain Traore is very smart, right? He doesn't only go to Russia to please Putin or to tell these supporters ABCD. He came with an agenda. The agenda is how do we transform the uranium in Niger? Right? How do we make sure that our natural resources, which is the uranium of Niger, of Oreno, get taken away? Because right now it's a French asset. It's taken away from the French, get back to Niger, and that we use it as those 3 states. And in order to do that, you need some technology. You need some technology, some nuclear technology, and I don't even want to call him some help, because really the people that have those technology, they have no uranium to use it. So they're helping more the world than the world is helping them. But it is quite clear that this travel in Russia, even though it is for a commemoration and it serves like some Putin agenda, has been made in order to foster the agenda of economic transformation, because Burkina cannot develop itself by importing petrol only from neighbors that don't really want him to develop, right? It cannot only rely on Ivory Coast economy, for instance, as it is right now, in order to have energy, right? He has to build his own energy. He doesn't have that much rivers as we have here, or dams to do, so he needs to do it with uranium that is already in the Sahel. The possession of the Sahel is now being all taken over, and talking about on how do we build sovereignty, and this new economic sovereignty agenda, how do we build it on the resources of the Sahel, on the gold in one hand to finance it, and on the other hand on the uranium to provide electricity not only for the Sahel, but for all the region, when right now it's more like the coastal that provides electricity for the Sahel. The Sahel can produce his own electricity thanks to his uranium and sell it to his neighbors, to the African development.
Thank you very much, Comrade Elisafri Thomas, my senior elder here, then my comrade here, Senior Elder Dan Rugarama Karuchiko. Your closing remarks.
Comrade,
the trip, right now as we speak, Traore left Russia last night. He's back into his country.
He's back this morning.
He's been in Russia. What do you make of that? Plus, you know, the coup attempts by France, his very own brothers are making everything possible.
They lost the brother status long time
to ensure
ago.
that, and you saw how they sponsored the black color, Burkina in France, whom they actually groomed to demonstrate Traore must leave power. Traore must leave, but they're in France.
Well, comrade,
and when you check, you find that these are boys that are being fed, educated, accommodated by France.
the dilemma, part of the dilemma of Africa, and this one every sincere academician and scholar has said it. Our own senior departed Anti-Diop, elaborately talked about it.
Correct.
And yes, check and he correctly and loudly talked about it. That Africa, they will always breed somebody who has got African color, but with everything, every taste, every thinking, very different from the African person. And this is now our new front of war. What Captain Ibrahim Traore has put himself in by making sure that he stands against the forces that have been draining Africa and Burkina Faso in particular. It is in the direct firing line that took his predecessor Thomas Sankara. He is not any better. The assassination attempts, even his trip to Russia, was sabotaged until Russian forces came and gave him protection up to when he landed. Mid-air, he was sabotaged and told to land somewhere. But they made sure they escorted him up to when he landed in Russia. There will be all manner of sabotage. His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, when he came, he was lauding the issue of barter trade. And we were on very correct terms with, for instance, Tanzania, whereby Tanzania wanted transformers, they wanted maize, they had transformers. And they were going to give us the transformers and we will give them maize. United States of America came with a cheaper way of giving them maize, which was yellow, this yellow maize for the very first time. They sabotaged that deal. Why? They wanted Uganda, which had emerged from the war, to go and buy expensive transformers from America. This is how they have always sabotaged us. And that's why we say that if, for instance, we get aligned, the alliance of Ibrahim Traore with his colleagues, like Uganda has allied again, with the likes of the BRICS, is a very correct economic decision. Why? Because we need to discover where we can harness our efforts. And if our efforts, economically speaking, at this material time can be harnessed in the BRICS, so be it, because we have been with International Monetary Fund and World Bank for donkey years. If any continent and any country like Uganda was to be a rich country, out of the direct benefits from International Monetary Fund and World Bank would now be very far, but we are not. Having realized that, therefore, that kind of alliance and marriage is not going to work for not only Uganda, for not only Burkina Faso, for not only Botswana, which was being praised simply because they were stealing their diamonds and deploying there the military troops, which to go and shatter if it is South Africa or anywhere. Because now our eyes, once again, like it was in the late 1950s and early 1960s, the African eyes are beginning to open and we are getting clear leadership, like Shonochebe was saying. The problem of Nigeria is leadership. The problem of Africa is leadership as such. We correct it, we correct our problem.
Thank you so much on that note, ladies and gentlemen, comrades. Thank you so much, my senior Dan Rugarama Karuchiko.
Absolutely.
And my comrade Thomas Elisafre Rutatina, the man who fears nothing.
Nothing.
My name is Andy Rumba Katseva, your speaker. This is the Pan-African Weekly Round Table. From me to you, I thank you, all our production team, Kamuntu, Francis, and others. Thank you so much for being part of this winning team. Africa, don't agonize.
Organize.
Let's
Don't
say,
agonize.
Organize.
la patrie ou la mort, nous vaincrons. Avec Philippe Sankara.